It was late. The kind of quiet that settles over a suburban street after the world has gone to bed. Inside, Michelle Paet was worried. Her husband, Nathan, was running late for his night shift at Nellis Air Force Base. She called him, her voice a mix of concern and gentle prodding. He needed to get going, she said. He was going to be late. So Nathan Paet, a dedicated serviceman and father, did what any good husband would do. He got up, put on his uniform, and prepared to leave for work. He had no idea his wife's worried call was not an act of love. It was a signal to the men waiting for him in the darkness. As Nathan opened his garage door, the quiet of the night was shattered. Gunshots echoed through the thought, no more sui sky. Maikad the Natchkan Shai Day. Nowhere Stonewait inside the house with their 4 young children heard the terrible sounds. She feigned panic, dialing 911. She told the dispatcher that her husband had been shot. She played the part of a terrified wife, her world collapsing around her. But it was all a lie. In reality, she wasn't walking into a nightmare. She had orchestrated it. The call she made to rush her husband out the door was a death sentence. She wasn't trying to save him from being late. She was making sure he walked right into an ambush she had meticulously planned. The scene that first responders found was one of pure chaos and horror. Nathan Paet lay bleeding on his garage floor, his life slipping away. His wife appeared hysterical, a portrait of a grieving widow. It was a convincing performance. To the outside world, this was a random, senseless act of violence. A good man, a family man, gunned down for no reason. But behind the facade of their seemingly perfect life, a story of deep betrayal was waiting to be uncovered. A story of greed, infidelity, and a cold-blooded plan to turn a life insurance policy into a payday, no matter the human cost. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong, it wasn't a random attack, it was something far more personal and far more sinister. It was a murder born from a toxic mix of financial desperation and a forbidden love affair. Michelle Paet had decided her husband was worth more to her dead than alive, and she had found willing accomplices to help her cash in. The chilling truth was that the greatest danger to Nathan Paet wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. The danger was sleeping right next to him, whispering words of love while plotting his death. The vows they had taken, till death do us part, were about to be fulfilled in the most brutal way imaginable. Who was Nathan Paet? To his friends and colleagues, he was the picture of a dedicated airman. Staff Sgt. Nathan Paet served in the United States Air Force, stationed at Nellis Air Force Base just outside Las Vegas. He was a supply technician for an F-15 squadron, a job he took seriously. He was known for his work ethic, his kindness, and his ever-present smile. Born in Guam, he carried a warmth and friendliness that made him easy to like. He was a proud father, a devoted husband, and a man who put his family and his country first. He was, by all accounts, living the American dream. On the home front, Nathan was a father to 4 young children. His life revolved around them. Friends remember him as a doting dad, always involved in his kids' lives from school events to playtime in the park. His social media pages were filled with pictures of his family, smiling faces on vacations, birthday parties, and everyday moments. He seemed to have it all. A stable career, a beautiful wife, and a house full of laughter. He worked hard to provide for them, often taking on extra duties and long hours to make ends meet. He was the anchor of his family, the steady presence they all relied on. But that dedication may have inadvertently created distance. His job was demanding. The long hours and late-night shifts meant he was often away from home. He was working to build a better future, to give his family everything they needed. He trusted that while he was away, his home was a safe and loving place. He trusted his wife, Michelle, to care for their children and manage their life together. He had no reason to believe that his hard work was not appreciated, or that his absence was being filled by someone else. Nathan was a man of honor and duty, and he assumed the people he loved lived by the same code. This was the man whose life was so brutally cut short. Not a faceless victim, but a loving father, a loyal husband, and a dedicated serviceman. He was the kind of person who communities are built around, reliable, kind, and selfless. His death would leave a gaping hole not only in his family but also among his friends and fellow airmen at Nellis. They would remember him as a hero, both for his service to his country and for his unwavering devotion to his family. A devotion that, tragically, was not returned in kind by the one person he should have been able to trust the most. Behind the carefully curated photos and the veneer of a happy marriage, the Paet household was crumbling. The primary source of tension was money. Despite Nathan's steady military income, the couple was drowning in debt. They were living beyond their means, struggling to keep up with car payments, rent, and the daily expenses of raising 4 children. The financial stress was a constant, corrosive presence in their relationship. Arguments about bills and spending became more frequent and more heated. The dream life they were trying to project to the world was built on a shaky foundation of credit card debt and financial anxiety. The pressure took its toll, especially on Michelle. While Nathan was at work, she felt trapped and resentful. It was during this time that she sought comfort outside her marriage. She began an affair with a man she worked with at a telemarketing company, Michael Rodriguez. Their relationship offered her an escape from her financial woes and the responsibilities of her life. With Rodriguez, she could imagine a different future, one free from debt and the man she had come to resent. The affair deepened, becoming more than just a fling. It became a competing loyalty, a secret that poisoned everything. The cracks in the marriage grew into chasms. Nathan was not entirely oblivious. He knew they were struggling with money, and he suspected Michelle might be unfaithful. Friends would later recall conversations where Nathan expressed his worries. He tried to address the issues, suggesting they get financial counseling and work on their relationship. But Michelle was no longer interested in fixing things. Her heart and her ambitions were elsewhere. She saw Nathan not as her partner, but as an obstacle standing between her, her lover, and the life of financial freedom she desperately craved. The resentment festered. Michelle began to see her husband's life insurance policy not as a safety net for their family, but as a golden ticket. It represented a way out, a way to solve all her problems in one fell swoop. The love and commitment that had once defined their marriage had been replaced by a cold, calculating greed. The affair with Michael Rodriguez was no longer just about passion, it became a business partnership. Together, they started to talk about a future without Nathan. A future that would be paid for with his life. In the midst of their financial turmoil, a number came to dominate Michelle Paet's thoughts: $617,000. This was the total payout from 2 separate life insurance policies on Nathan. One was a standard policy provided by the military, a sum of $400,000. But sometime before the murder, another policy was taken out. A private policy for an additional $250,000. For a family struggling with debt, this was a life-altering amount of money. For Nathan, it was meant to be a safety net, a guarantee that if the unthinkable happened, his wife and 4 children would be taken care of. He saw it as his ultimate act of love and responsibility. Michelle, however, saw it differently. To her, the insurance money was not a fallback plan. It was the plan. It was the solution to all her problems. It was a one-way ticket out of debt and into a new life with her lover, Michael Rodriguez. The money became an obsession. She began to talk about it with Rodriguez, planting the seed of an idea that was as audacious as it was evil. What if Nathan were to die? They could be rich. They could be free. The abstract concept of a life insurance payout slowly morphed into a concrete, achievable goal. The love for her husband was replaced by a lust for his death benefits. The existence of the second, private policy would later become a major red flag for investigators. Why would a couple so deep in debt take on the extra expense of another large insurance policy? It suggested forethought. It suggested planning. For Michelle and Rodriguez, the combined sum of over $500,000 was a powerful motivator. It was enough to make them believe they could get away with murder. They convinced themselves that this money was their destiny, and Nathan was the only thing standing in their way. The policy wasn't a comfort, it was a temptation they could not resist. The sum of $617,000 hung over their conversations, fueling their dark fantasies. It was the price they put on a man's life. A husband's life, a father's life. Every dollar represented a step further away from their troubles and a step closer to their twisted dream. The insurance policy, a document designed to protect a family from tragedy, was perverted into the very instrument of that tragedy. It was no longer a symbol of Nathan's love for his family, but a contract for his murder, with his own wife as the primary beneficiary. With the promise of a massive payday, Michelle Paet and Michael Rodriguez moved from fantasy to planning. Michelle was the mastermind, the insider who knew Nathan's every move. She used her knowledge of his schedule to devise a seemingly foolproof plan. Nathan worked the night shift at Nellis Air Force Base, a routine that made him predictable. Michelle knew exactly when he left for work, the route he took, and that he would be alone in their garage in the moments before he drove away. This predictability was the key to their plot. It offered a window of opportunity, a moment of vulnerability they could exploit. Michelle's manipulation was not limited to planning. She had to convince her lover, Rodriguez, to become a killer. She painted a picture of a life of luxury, free from all their worries, all paid for by the insurance money. She also allegedly claimed that Nathan was abusive, a lie designed to give Rodriguez a twisted sense of justification for the act they were about to commit. Rodriguez, blinded by his infatuation with Michelle and the lure of easy money, agreed. He then recruited a third person, a man named Corry Hawkins, to be the triggerman. Hawkins, who was facing his own financial troubles, was offered $5,000 for his part in the murder. The plan was set for the night of December 1st, 2010. Rodriguez and Hawkins would lie in wait near the Paet family home. Michelle's role was crucial. She was to act as the lure, ensuring Nathan left the house at the precise moment the killers were in position. As the time for his shift approached, she made the fateful phone call, urging him to hurry up and leave. It was the final signal. Nathan, ever the dutiful husband and employee, grabbed his things and headed to the garage. He had no idea he was walking into a trap set by his own wife. As Nathan opened the garage door, Hawkins, armed with a handgun, confronted him. Rodriguez was nearby, acting as the lookout. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Hawkins fired multiple shots, striking Nathan in the torso and neck. The gunman then fled into the night, leaving Nathan to die on the cold concrete floor. The deadly pact had been fulfilled. They had done their part. Now, all that was left was for Michelle to do hers, play the role of the shocked, grieving widow, and wait for the insurance check to arrive. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, Michelle Paet delivered an Oscar-worthy performance. Her 911 call was filled with frantic sobs and desperate pleas for help. When the police and paramedics arrived, they found a woman seemingly consumed by grief and shock. She cried, she collapsed, and she told them she had no idea who would do such a thing. She painted a picture of a happy family torn apart by a senseless act of violence. To the initial responders, she was just another tragic victim, a wife whose world had been shattered in an instant. She maintained this facade for days. She spoke with detectives, her voice trembling, recounting the events of the night. She described a loving marriage and a perfect family life. She offered no leads, no potential enemies, nothing that would suggest this was anything other than a random attack. She leaned on friends and family for support, accepting their condolences and sharing in their grief. She even helped plan her husband's memorial service, weeping alongside his loved ones. She was playing the part of the grieving widow so convincingly that for a time, no one suspected the horrifying truth. However, even in the depths of her performance, small cracks began to appear. Her story had inconsistencies. Her demeanor would sometimes shift when she thought no one was watching. Detectives trained to spot deception noted that her grief, while dramatic, seemed to lack genuine depth. She was more focused on the narrative of what happened than on the raw emotion of her loss. She spoke of her husband in the past tense with an ease that seemed unnatural for someone who had just lost their partner hours before. These were subtle clues, but they were enough to raise suspicion. The most telling behavior was her immediate inquiries about Nathan's life insurance benefits. Within days of his murder, she was asking questions about how to file a claim and when the money would be paid out. To a grieving widow, such practical matters would normally be an afterthought, lost in a sea of sorrow. For Michelle, it seemed to be a priority. This premature focus on the financial payout was a major red flag for investigators. It suggested a motive that had nothing to do with love and loss, and everything to do with money. The Grieving Widow Act was starting to fall apart. As Michelle focused on the impending insurance payout, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detectives were busy digging into the Paet's lives. They started with the basics interviews with friends, family, and co-workers. It didn't take long for the perfect marriage narrative to unravel. Friends of Nathan told police about the couple's severe financial problems and Nathan's suspicions that Michelle was cheating on him. This directly contradicted the rosy picture Michelle had painted. The investigation quickly shifted from a random shooting to a possible domestic homicide. The key to breaking the case wide open came from technology. Detectives obtained search warrants for Michelle's phone records and computer. They discovered a treasure trove of evidence. There were thousands of text messages between Michelle and Michael Rodriguez, messages that detailed not only their romantic affair, but also their financial desperation. The texts laid bare their secret relationship, filled with declarations of love and fantasies about a future together, a future without Nathan. The digital trail was undeniable proof of her betrayal. The most damning evidence came from messages sent in the days and hours leading up to the murder. Detectives found texts where Michelle and Rodriguez discussed the life insurance money. They found messages where Michelle provided Rodriguez with details of Nathan's schedule. And, crucially, they found the texts from the night of the murder itself. The messages showed Michelle coordinating with Rodriguez, telling him when Nathan was getting ready to leave and confirming he was on his way to the garage. The final text, sent just moments before the gunshots, was the digital smoking gun. Armed with this overwhelming evidence, detectives brought Michelle Paet in for another interview. This time, they weren't buying her grieving widow act. They confronted her with the text messages, with the evidence of her affair, and with the financial motive. Her story crumbled. Faced with the undeniable proof of her lies, Michelle confessed. She admitted to her role in the plot, detailing how she, Rodriguez and Hawkins had planned and executed her husband's murder for the insurance money. The intricate web of lies she had woven had completely unraveled. With Michelle Paet's confession, the dominoes fell quickly. Police arrested Michael Rodriguez and Corry Hawkins. The case against the trio was airtight. It was a sordid tale of greed and betrayal, backed by text messages, phone records, and Michelle's own detailed confession. The three co-conspirators, once united in their deadly pact, now faced the grim reality of the justice system. The dream of a life of luxury funded by blood money had turned into a nightmare of courtrooms, lawyers, and the prospect of life behind bars. The legal proceedings laid bare the cold, calculated nature of the crime. Prosecutors presented the mountain of evidence to the jury, painting a clear picture of Michelle as the manipulative mastermind, Rodriguez as the infatuated lover, and Hawkins as the hired gun. In a bid to avoid the death penalty, all three eventually took plea deals. Michael Rodriguez and Corry Hawkins pleaded guilty to murder and conspiracy. Hawkins, the triggerman, received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rodriguez received a similar sentence, ensuring he would never taste the freedom he so desperately craved. Michelle Paet, the woman who had orchestrated her husband's murder, also pleaded guilty. She admitted to her role in the conspiracy, the ultimate betrayal of her marriage vows. Her performance in court was a stark contrast to the hysterical widow act she'd put on for police. She was subdued, her fate sealed. She, too, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no $617,000 payout. There would be no new life with her lover. Her only future was one spent behind the walls of a prison, haunted by what she had done. Justice for Nathan Paet came in the form of these life sentences. The people responsible for his death were held accountable. But the verdicts could not undo the damage. They could not bring back a loving father or a dedicated serviceman. The community at Nellis Air Force Base and Nathan's family in Guam mourned a man of honor, his life stolen by greed. While the legal chapter of this tragedy had closed, the personal, emotional fallout was just beginning for those he left behind, especially for his 4 young children. The true victims of this horrific crime, beyond Nathan Paet himself, are his 4 children. In one terrible night, they lost both their parents. Their father was murdered, and their mother was revealed to be his killer. They were left orphaned, their lives forever altered by the selfish and violent acts of the people who were supposed to protect them. They were placed in the care of relatives, left to navigate a world without the father they adored, and to grapple with the incomprehensible truth about their mother. The legacy of Michelle's betrayal is a lifetime of trauma for her own children. This case serves as a chilling reminder of the warning signs that can exist within a relationship. Severe financial stress, infidelity, and growing emotional distance are not just marital problems. They can be catalysts for something far worse. Nathan Paet had his suspicions, but like many, he likely never imagined the person he shared his life with was capable of such evil. It underscores the importance of taking threats, even unspoken ones, seriously. If a relationship feels unsafe, or if a partner's behavior becomes alarmingly cold and calculating, seeking help from family, friends, or authorities is not an overreaction. It can be a lifesaver. The sudden procurement of a large secondary life insurance policy, especially during times of financial hardship, should be seen as a significant red flag. While life insurance is a responsible financial tool, in the wrong hands, it can become a powerful and dangerous motive. This case highlights the dark side of human nature, where unchecked greed can extinguish all sense of morality, love, and loyalty. It is a lesson in the corrosive power of secrets and lies, and how a desire for money and a misguided sense of freedom can lead to the ultimate act of betrayal. In the end, we remember Staff Sergeant Nathan Paet. We remember him not for the brutal way he died, but for the honorable way he lived. He was a hero in his Air Force uniform, a devoted father, and a trusting husband. His story is a tragic monument to the vows that were broken and the family that was destroyed. It is a solemn warning that behind a picture-perfect facade can lurk a fatal darkness. The vows of marriage are a sacred promise, but when twisted by greed and betrayal, they can become the deadliest trap of all.